Good afternoon and welcome to the Fitchburg Historical Commission's meeting on August 31st, 1923. As I will now call this meeting to order. With us, we do have a quorum of Ellen DiGeronimo, Donald Ostrowski, Andy Lepasti, and myself, Keith Chanot. We have one guest with us here, Mark Barbadoro, building commissioner for the city of Fitchburg. And I believe we have one other guest that is joining to monitor our meeting via Zoom, and that is Jacqueline Weejay. So welcome to everybody, and Jacqueline, you're always welcome to join us. Thank you very much. Please be advised that FATV is conducting an audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. And kind of moving on, we've done our roll call. And let's see. And we're asking if there's anybody that would like to make any public comment. Hearing or seeing none, let's move on to our, let me post our agenda here. Let's see, make sure I can post this. Let's see. Share screen.
I have a new visual in front of me. I'll have to see what this means.
Okay, I think, hang on a second here. You can just stay where you are on your computer, I believe. Let me bring up my... And let me know if you can see the agenda on the public screen there, guys.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Share screen. There we go.
There it is.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, and everybody, for your patience. What I would like to do, since Mark is here as a guest to kind of help us on an agenda item here, unless there's some comment not to, I'd like to move on to, at this point, to item number 4 on our agenda, update on the historic building demolition delay ordinance, or draft ordinance, that the commission has been working on for many years. And we specifically asked Mark if he could join us with kind of his background information on, he's been, I believe, building commissioner in other towns and cities in the Commonwealth, and perhaps looking at our proposed ordinance of demolition delay, how we might craft this, and seeing if there's any specific issues or problems that he might see from his viewpoint, in that the building commissioner is certainly a vital part of the process in issuing permits for demolition of buildings. And in the way our current draft ordinance is written, as permits are issued, if they would fall under the category for a demolition delay, as we've written it in our draft, the building commissioner would notify the historical commission of a building that would fall under the category of eligibility under our draft ordinance here. So again, Mark, welcome. And maybe if you want to just give a little background of your thoughts and information about demo delays in the Commonwealth and cities here like ours.
Sure. I've worked in 6
municipalities throughout the Commonwealth, and all of them have had a demolition delay bylaw of some form included. Most of the ones that I have worked with have had a year demolition delay. I think most of them didn't have a year category so much as a culturally significant list that they would put together of buildings. And it can be effective when there is somebody who can have an alternate use for a building, perhaps, or a small building that might actually even be sold and moved. Barns and some small houses get moved sometimes. I've seen communities attempt to use the demolition delay bylaw for roof windows and siding and deck. I'm not particularly a fan of that because I think the premise behind the demolition delay is not to prevent someone from patching their roof per se. It's not supposed to be a nuisance. It's supposed to be, can you find an alternate use for the building? So when I heard that you guys were looking to do this, I had originally, and I'm sorry, I haven't been terribly familiar with the draft bylaw, but I believe it started with a date, and it also had other things like stone walls and you know, that would be, if it has stone walls in it that are not the stone walls that abut the right of way on a scenic road, those stone walls don't require permits to remove them now, and that would make it hard to enforce it except reactively. So I'm not particularly a fan of that as well.
Yeah, no, so that's two separate proposals.
Okay.
They're not connected, except, you know, theoretically. The purpose behind the stone wall ordinance is actually for conscientious property owners who want to know what they should do, and for city officials to advise them. So it's not meant to be punitive or in any way, but it would be nice if someone is moving a historic stone, something of historic significance on their property, if there could be a notation of it, something that this stone wall used to be there, but now we moved it over here. Great, you know, from a historian's point of view, I want to know that. I want to know where it was and where it was moved to. But both of those proposed ordinances, I think, I don't know how to get across, or we don't know how to get across any better, that these are not meant to take, well, you know, it's not meant to take power away from city officials. It gives them an extra arrow in their quiver. It gives them something extra, so that if someone comes, wants to say, I want to demolish this building, and you determine, well, this might have historical significance in terms of the culture of the city. Let's look at it further. You don't have to give an immediate yes or no. You can say, well, we have a process here for determining that, and it can be ended at any time by the city. It doesn't, I think because there's some municipalities have a year, some have 6 months, some have 18 months. I think one has up to 2 years. But that is an ultimate end date that if nothing has been resolved, then it ends, the process ends. And so that's not the date that people have to wait to get a determination.
Right. I think the way the process plays out is the way I've normally experienced it is I would have a list of the demolition delay buildings, and then I would look down that list when someone would talk about demolition. And then if it was on the list, I would deny the building permit and say you need to have a hearing with the historical commission. And then the historical commission at that hearing makes a finding whether or not the building is worth saving, despite the fact that it may be on the list or be of a certain date, depending on how they ultimately structure it. And that is an important point that needs to be raised to the public, because some staff in City Hall did not even understand that it was not a switch that was, if you own a historic building, you now must wait a year after, right? And a lot of people think that's the case.
That's what we found out. Yes.
Yeah. But also, I think it needs to be a manageable list for the, given the volume of development that we're going through right now, because we are going through an economic boom that does put a lot of historic buildings at risk, but it also, it could become unduly burdensome if it is a date, and then suddenly a huge amount of buildings in the city would need to be evaluated individually at meetings. And if you're only doing one meeting a month and you have, maybe there's a notice requirement, I would imagine, perhaps a week or two in advance, then now it's a month and a half before you have your first hearing, and you've already, you entered your building permit application anticipating a start date in 2 weeks' time, and now you are, now you're waiting a month and a half, and you didn't even know this was coming, and it kind of walloped you, destroyed your plans.
Yeah.
Makes people angry. So that's, and I want you to understand that I was on the historic, the Copeland Planned Historic District in Oak Bluffs in the last time I worked, and I when I came to Fitchburg, I was utterly amazed at the buildings here. It's like no other city, and they, losing them one by one would be tragic. So I do agree, but I also think it has to be of a manageable. What you guys could entertain could become unmanageable quickly. So what I did, I could not do what Keith had asked me to do, which was find the amount of permits that happen that might be under consideration in a particular area or a particular group. So I just took a year's worth of permits. So there was in the year 2022, from beginning to end, there was 713 windows, roof, and siding permits that were issued, and there were 69 deck rebuilds, and some of those might have been in the back, but I bet a lot were in the front too. And there was 14 main building demolitions. There was probably a few others. I didn't get a chance to generate a list of the secondary buildings that get demolished, but there was 14 primary buildings that were moved down last year. I don't know if they were, what years they were, but I bet if you had a year one, I bet all 14 were in it, because usually it's the older inventory that gets torn down. So also could be at least half of those were fires too. So that you could probably say maybe only 7 were done voluntarily. Meaning somebody wanted to reuse the property. And probably seven of them were probably from fires that needed to be torn down. So I guess my only recommendation is I would start with something that is manageable and see how it works for this board. And I would check with IT. We have a permitting software system that we use. And if you want to keep the staff, actually everybody wants to keep government staff to the barest minimum so that the taxes don't rise. If we can leverage technology to help figure out what buildings are on the list. So if we create a map using Map Block and Lot of a known list of buildings, then we can make it have a automatic demolition delay bylaw flag put in the system, and then whoever's permitting it at the time goes, oh, wait a minute, we need to stop. So
here was the problem. There have been censuses done at the buildings, but they've all been incomplete and faulty. And when we put in for a block grant to update the census, we were turned down by the city. So we're kind of caught in the catch-22. You're saying that we need a list of those buildings, but we can't get that list until we get a complete census.
But could you use like Mattress just to start?
Okay, well, then you come up against a date, because then the Mattress, it goes by, like, you could say, well, 50 years. But then all sorts of buildings that really are not of historical or cultural significance for the city then are, as you pointed out, these are older buildings. So at some, what we would like to see is someone like you, that would be great, at the beginning stage, when someone puts in for to demolish a building, for you to raise the question whether this is something that might be of historical significance. And we don't have to wait a month to meet. We can meet on an ad hoc basis and be in virtual, immediate communication with you about that. But you raise a really excellent point. Is the Historical Commission as presently constituted up to that task?
Right. And also, you're also asking a pretty huge ask of an individual. You're now giving the subjectivity of the first decision to a staff member. In my case, a person who doesn't live in town and may have very different ideas than the Historical Commission. What is a building that needs to be saved or not saved? So it runs against the grain of the job, because most of the job is sort of black letter interpretation of laws and the zoning code and city code, where it's either black or it's white, right? And not, there isn't that level of subjectivity with the job. So we would, as employees, would want to have the Historical Commission make that finding.
Okay, so then we would have to go to the Mattress list. And establish an arbitrary date, 50 years, 75 years.
Let me make a suggestion, because going to the Mattress list is not an easy thing for a staff person to do. It's a multi-step piece. In our current assessors database, there's usually a date of the building on record. I think kind of the last time I looked this was maybe a few years ago. Anything before 1900 was kind of listed as 1900. That still might be the case, and anything after that or more current would be listed as the actual building date that the assessor's list has on it. Mark, would this be a database that perhaps your staff could kind of tie into and be able to come up with a date using the assessors instead of Mattress?
A date, we could use the assessor's records, but as you say, if that date is anything over 1900, the result is going to be 1900. So if you want to prior to...
And if we're saying it's 50 or even 100 year, depending on what we decide is the initial tick for consideration of a demolition delay. Right now, our current draft is 50 years. That would of course take it to 1973 or something like that. So that would be certainly cover, and buildings 1900 would certainly fall under that category then.
If you do that, though, the only thing, Keith, if I may, sorry to interrupt, if you do that, then I think you're going to have, and if you wanted it to be roofs and windows and sidings and decks, then you would be having, you've got 800 permits here in my hand for 1 year, and you guys are have to navigate a huge chunk of that, because most of the buildings that are getting resided are over 50 years old or re-roofed or so on.
I think in our current draft that would not be a problem, because I think we're in the our definition of demolition and demolition permit in our current draft demolition is any act of pulling down, destroying, removing, dismantling, or razing a building, or commencing the work of total or substantial destruction with the intent of completing the same. I think that's, we could tweak that some more to keep it as a full building. And the definition of demolition permit, the building permit issued by the building commissioner for a demolition of a building, excluding a building permit issued solely for the demolition of the interior of a building. So, it sounds like, it's right now our draft is saying it's the complete building. And I think by inference, and we could tweak this some, that would exclude, replacing windows or demolition of a roof shingles or even siding, although that would be nice, but I don't think, as you suggest, that would be, hundreds of building permits probably, or demolition permits. So currently our bylaw is saying a building, or certainly substantial part of a building, and does not include the interior demolition. And I think by reference, and we could, if fellow commissioners would, we went along with revising this, we could even say it excludes demolition of certain parts of buildings like windows or siding or roof or whatever, just to, and understanding, getting keeping it more general, as this, I believe, is inferred in this current definition, so that it isn't overwhelming the city and our commission and permits. And I think if you said, things that were exclusive of whole buildings, exclusive of, buildings damaged by fire, if we're talking somewhere in the range of 7 or 8 or something like that, that I think that you had quoted, that would be something that's certainly more manageable, perhaps for your department and for our commission, and being able to do a hearing on it. There is, because it is a public hearing, and for demolition permits, I believe it's a 2-week notice, I believe, to post it. So there is a little bit of time of posting, once the application comes through to the commission for a review of a qualified older building. We would have to set a hearing date, and I think we have to act on it relatively quickly, or it becomes null and void and the demolition can go ahead on it. So, but there is, I believe, a 2-week public notice period, just for some clarification on it. Okay.
Can I ask you one other thing about the notice? Is it a notice in the newspaper of general circulation, as well as a posting on the, whatever our standard posting notice requirement is?
Yes, I'm not quite sure about the newspaper. It would certainly be on the city's posting website, and perhaps it requires whatever the Commonwealth's requirements are for public hearings for municipalities. We would have to follow that.
So if there is a newspaper one, then there's an expense that's generated, and there's also additional delay because the newspaper only comes out once or twice a month, and then or maybe more, I don't know, but there's that time frame that you have a window of opportunity to give the notice to the newspaper that you have to generate, and then they need to post it in their thing. That all takes time. It has to be done 2 times in a 2-week period.
Okay, so you mentioned the anger of the person who wants to demolish a building, but what about the anger of the residents of Fitchburg who are made sick when their historic buildings are torn down and there's no record of it? There's no record. Why was it torn down? Oh, and then there are all sorts of rumors, but there's no public record of it that we know of. And slowly, one by one, the heritage of the city is being destroyed.
Yeah, that's obviously our intent, but we need to figure out how we can do this so it's workable, kind of for all parties involved. So, so this is what the intent of talking with you, Mark, is, and we're not trying to sabotage what your commission does, and
Mark, you say in the other towns you work in, there was historic building lists.
Yeah, well, there's one
people have generated.
Yes.
And was that in the software too? Like it might bring up a flag that says, "Hey, this is a historic building." Or
in the other towns I worked, we didn't have the kind of software that we have now. This one, if you have a region on a map, we can generate the image, put it in there, and then any property in there would be, subject to that. We probably can even do by date, but I think I would recommend this board go and talk to IT about that and see if they could. So if you did say a 50, 100, or 150 year number, for argument's sake, they might be able to make it just pop right up. So that way you're not necessarily missing anything. And yeah, I totally understand. I do not like to see buildings that could be repurposed, knocked down, especially when they're, the caliber of the buildings in this community. So totally understand that and would like to keep them. And the idea of creating a record of the buildings the way they were is really nice. And frankly, I would be more interested in this board making a historic district, a 40C style one where you could talk about the windows and the doors and the decks and the things like that make, because they do have to get replaced from time to time. Somebody's got to be there to make sure that they're replaced, the kind and character gets, replaced in a
It's not just a matter of being nice. It's a matter of the economic redevelopment of the city. And when you tear down an old structure that has appeal and put up a dollar store, you can say, "Oh, well, that's economic development." Yeah, short term, but not long term. It doesn't appeal to. It doesn't contribute to the economic redevelopment of the city overall.
I would agree. I think when people think about the development of Fitchburg, they're very sensitive about the fact that they need to not impede any growth because Fitchburg has had a downturned economy in the past. And so their thinking is that if we can just let anybody do anything that they want, eventually the rising tide will carry all boats. But my experience in the building department is that is the exact opposite of what's going on. It is, you guys are experiencing a boom, a real huge growth spurt, and thinking that you might need to take seriously the preservation of the future, because as you say, a downtown of mostly inexpensively built steel and glass structures may not be appealing in the future. And when the economy slows again, then you're left with that dollar store environment.
And there have been several master plans for the economic redevelopment of the city, and every one of them cites use your historical resources.
I agree with you.
And Alan can tell you about Salem. And Salem was in a very bad economic situation. And they turned it around and they used their historic resources. And any other, any number of towns, go to Europe. Destroyed World War II cities, totally destroyed. And what did they do? They went back and they reconstructed their historic buildings. And now they're overrun with tourists.
Right. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think it's nice to hear your comments Mark, and your understanding of historic preservation and how it can be beneficial to communities. Just for the public that might be viewing this now or at a future time, let me just explain what a demolition delay ordinance, as we're proposing at this moment, represents. And this kind of falls under, I believe, kind of regulation of through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and what its a municipality might be able to do. A delay ordinance is, as it says, it is just a delay, is not a restriction on demolition. It is merely is meant as a time for a period of possible reconsideration of the understanding of the cultural and historic value that a specific property or building may have to the community, and it is kind of falls on the responsibility of the Historical Commission that is kind of viewing the request for demolition to be allowed to happen right away, which would happen at the hearing. The hearing would either say, no, we're going to continue the delay, or we believe that the property is insignificant and that the owner can go ahead and demolish it right at that point, or the building commissioner then can issue the permit. If not, it would fall under the delay period. And currently we're proposing a 1 year or 12-month delay. Other communities, like Mark had said, have it anywhere from 6 months to 18 months. And I think there might be a few that have 2-year delays. But what this does, and responsibility then kind of falls on the commission to try to work if a delay is enacted for whatever the specific period that the ordinance has in it. It's important for us, the commission members and other members of the community, to be able to help and point out alternatives to demolition to this particular property owner that might, and understanding the heritage value perhaps of the building, and being able to find out alternatives that could be to the actual demolition. And if after the specific period of the delay comes up, the time is clicked off, then by right the owner has and the building commissioner then would issue the demolition permit, and the permit can go forward. So it is just a delay, and it is and it's meant for an opportunity of our commission and the community at large to be able to discuss with the applicant alternatives that could be sought after, and kind of working with that particular owner of different ways of doing it besides kind of the total demolition that they're proposing. And that's essentially it. It's not a restriction. It is meant as a delay. The time period, we think our current proposal is for 12 months. And the 12-month period allows the commission, if you will, to have enough time to kind of work with the owner and being able to assess, and perhaps the commission and community at large being able to offer some alternatives to the potential demolition, and ultimately the demolition of the building if the time period expires. So it is a delay. It's not a restriction on it, but it is a time delay proposal. So just general information on the proposal we're doing. I think I think there was another question I had, Mark, that I had emailed you. And one was kind of the number of permits, your kind of guess of, 100 years older or older, and we're again talking about total demolition of a building. And this does not affect buildings that you, as the commissioner, would deem as public safety issues, such as fires and things where a building just cannot be restored, or made structurally safe for occupancy. Sometimes partial fires, we could take a look at, like the B.F. Brown building that had certainly a decent sized partial fire in it, but is a historically significant building that's certainly being redeveloped into new use through various means that the current developers are using for it. It would fall under your department to kind of give the initial clearance of the permits. And as we've kind of discussed today, I think there's some things to work out as we define our proposed ordinance in a little bit more detail, that it is working with your department and with IT on being able to make it as for a staff member to be able to quickly run through a list or punch in a computer code or something to see if it qualifies in a specific delay period or time period or date of the building, or however we kind of make this list. So it becomes, we know your department's busy, and I think it's really a good point that this is something we need to propose and coordinate well with how it would be administered.
So I think what I'm going to do is go back maybe 10 years worth of demolition. I can do that by the days and today, maybe, or tomorrow at some point, to just figure out how many total building demolitions have happened. And then I have to tell you that almost all of the permits that I get are on buildings over 100 years old. Right? You're replacing windows, you're doing roofs, siding, decks. Most of those buildings, the vast majority of them are over 100 years old. And of the demolition, total building demolitions, I would say the vast majority of them are as well. But I would say that, like I said, approximately, I've had 7 out of that 14 were buildings that were so damaged by fire that it was not easy to reclaim.
How was that determined?
Just by me looking at the buildings and giving you a guess.
But you made it subjective.
Yeah.
You could make, but you can't make it about whether it has historic significance.
Whether it's what?
Mine has. You could make a subjective determination by looking at the building.
I can give you an estimation, but that's a very different thing than the permitting process, right? I would never say, well, that building's about 100 years old, so I'm going to put it on I'm going to make you not be able to demolish it and force you to go to a hearing. I would never do that. But when we're talking about trying to have an understanding of how many buildings you guys will be receiving, I can give a pretty good estimation just by looking at the total number of demolition permits over a period of time. And then, my experience with the buildings that have been demolished, since I've been here, I've only been here 6 years, but I can, kind of have a sense of how old those buildings are. And that can give you an idea of what your workflow is going to be like when this thing is approved. But I would not, and the other subjective thing, as Keith pointed out, is if the building is a threat to safety, I can make that determination. But that's a very different kind of determination to make.
I don't understand how that's different.
Well, because if I don't know that the community would want me to make it, or even this committee would want me to make that determination, because my determination on whether a building is worth saving is probably all the time. If it's, 100-year-old building, and just feel like these buildings should be safe. But how does that benefit anybody? That's really just about the same result as if I take a black letter reading of it and you say, if the building is 100 years old, you must send it to the committee. And then let the committee at an open forum where everybody in the community can weigh in about that building, make those kind of discretionary findings. And conversely, when you're talking about dangerous buildings, you actually don't want the community weighing in. You want to keep them away from that because they'll be coming in going, but that's a culturally significant building. And you don't need that necessarily in the mix, right? So
I don't understand how you make the determination that a building is dangerous.
well, one way I do it is for the bridge that used to cross the railroad tracks was I would hire a structural engineer to come out and give me a finding.
Oh, so you would bring in an expert?
I would, yeah. When somebody's life is at stake, right? The bridge collapsing and landing on a railroad track and killing a bunch of
But you
people.
don't bring in experts in terms of the historical or cultural heritage of the city?
No, we don't.
Okay. All right.
There's an expense to that. If I brought in an engineer or a historian for every one of these 700 permits,
If you pay them, but we're going to pay.
Yeah, oh, well, we would be paying for it unless we build during the permit fee.
No, but we're not paid. We're a historical commission. We don't receive any salary or anything.
No, I didn't say that it was you guys were on the take. I was saying that you would be paying as a taxpayer. That's what I meant. Is that, when I hire an engineer, that money has to come from the general fund, and that money in the general fund is pretty much your tax. So, that's why I was saying if I 700 historians come out and look at 700 permits.
We're not talking about 700 historians. What you're changing, you're creating a straw man argument here. We're talking about a historical commission that has some experience with this. I am a historian. This is all volunteer, but we are basically city employees. We're here. We're ready to give you whatever help you need.
And I appreciate that. And that's the whole point, is that we would be sending them to you guys to evaluate and use your experience and your local knowledge of the history of the city and its buildings, and to help make a finding and to make it an open and transparent process for the community writ large to be able to talk about whether or not they feel the building should be. You get none of that up at the building department. It's just, there's none of that. So that's, I think, a big selling point for the demolition delay bylaw.
That's what I think. Thank you.
I think the building department has kind of the same ideas about preservation and his heritage of cities that we do, and I think particularly with Mark heading up that department, and questions like this would be dealt with properly. I think there was one other situation in demolitions that when we were talking with community development, and at times the city itself does demolition of properties, and quite often through application with community development block grant funding for a few specific demolition projects, and which has been happening for many years in the past, I think. And these demolitions are probably, and maybe you can kind of fill us in. You might have some better knowledge on this than we do as commission members. These are buildings that are derelict buildings, or maybe unsafe buildings, or being unmaintained, and absentee landlords, and perhaps illicit things happening with inside of it, or maybe it's just a danger of falling on kids playing in it, or whatever. Maybe specifically the ones where the city has, I think, must have taken ownership. Maybe you could fill us in on these particular buildings that fall under the community development block grant funding that have in the past. Anyhow, could you give us an idea of what these buildings are like? And kind of my ultimate question is, would a demolition delay ordinance, as we're kind of proposing now, would that restrict kind of the time frame of applying for these buildings, having a hearing in the process, the planning board giving approval to the funding grants that community development might be seeking for these community projects, if you will? Could you enlighten us from your point how this happens?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not, I'm more narrowly focused in terms of my work than what the rest of community development does. They're looking at a very big picture, and I'm looking at the structure, right, of the built environment, and they're looking at the built environment as how are we going to make sure that we're making the community thrive and be safe and other things. So they have a different agenda, but so I'll give you some examples of buildings that have been knocked down or taken by the city. So there's previous municipal buildings that have now come into long-term disrepair. Perhaps a school department stopped using a building 5-10 years ago, and because it wasn't used, the maintenance money was shifted towards the buildings that were being used, and that building maybe was falling into a state of real disrepair and disuse. And then when you go inside them, water has been coming in for years, and it's moldy, and then many cases the entire finishes of the ceiling have collapsed. They're now on the floor. I'm thinking of a particular school building that I'm not going to mention the name of, but that was one that was recently that I saw. And then the other issue with a building like that might be that it is encompassing the entire property, so that there is no way to either the mass of the building makes it impractical for reuse without adequate parking or perhaps green space around it. So that might be a reason to try and redevelop that area through demolishing of the building. So a demolition delay bylaw could be worked into an RFP process, perhaps. I'm just thinking out loud, where they would be, well, we know the building has been declared culturally significant, and so we know it's going to be up for a year. Maybe we can do an RFP and see if someone can repurpose that building instead of knocking it down. That's one kind of building. Then there's other kind of buildings, and I was being asked about my subjectivity to it, whether or not something should be demolished. Then there is something that the city has in great abundance, which are triple deckers. And some of the triple deckers, all of the character is now gone, and the lot is ill-suited for anything other than a parking lot for one of the many other triple deckers that we still have. So if all of the architectural features are gone already, and the building is in extreme disrepair, and it's in an area where, even if it were redeveloped, it would be problematic. that kind of subjectivity, I'd like to see the historical commission weigh in on and say, what are we really saving here? And move that kind of building through very rapidly. So I think it could be a net benefit for the city if they enacted a demolition delay bylaw. I feel pretty strongly if they would expand a more historic district with teeth where you guys could actually weigh in on features of buildings in a particular region would be a benefit, but that's not up for discussion right now.
That would have to be an overlay because there are a lot of historic buildings spread throughout. It's not just downtown.
Right.
That would be a lot of work, but
every community I've worked in has had multiple historic districts.
we do. We have to work through the Historical Society. We've had that information. All right.
But that's what I'm talking. Sorry.
No, that is very germane. And yeah, do we complete the triple deckers? No.
You're not really losing them.
You're probably
still
in
there.
some way, exactly. And they've outlived their expected longevity by decades. No question. But I'll just bring up the steam plant is one that I know a number of residents I've talked to in Fitchburg. They bring the steam plant up, and that really rankles a lot of people. We don't even the Johnsonian. I know, there are all sorts of explanations about, well, there's a fire, and then there was rain, and then there was mold, and then it was, and well, as a historian, I want to know more about that decision-making process to tear down the Johnsonian. That was a big deal. That was a very important historic building in downtown. It was not only a historic landmark, but it was turning into a cultural landmark as well. And then it was gone. And I asked different people, why was it torn down? Oh, there was a fire. Oh, there was mold. Oh, it was, but I don't know any official explanation. Maybe there was. Maybe I missed it.
I don't. It was before my time here.
And that's another problem because we get people. But then they go and they're gone and we're left with questions and no answers.
Well, that again is about transparency and having a hearing process and a record in minutes.
Yes.
But what I can tell you is that my guess is with the Johnsonian is what I experienced with a lot of building fires, and that is the fire is maybe 25–30% of the damage, and the water is the rest. And then the insurance company causes the most damage through 1 or 2 year period of neglect that happens. So when you burn half the building down, the first thing that goes is the top, and then the bottom gets filled with water, and then it sits open to the elements for a year or two while the insurance company wrangles it. And if you have a building like the Johnsonian where it's condoized, now you've got 25, 30, 50 owners all trying to, it takes the consensus of the association to get anything done, and it becomes very difficult. And before long, the building, there's just really nothing left. And the owners, what do you say to the condo owners who need to move on? Maybe they need a new building, it's a place to live. How do you got to weigh those things. But I agree with you that they're losing the record, if you will, of the history of the city would be a bad thing. So,
Thank you, Mark. I think those are good points, and a delay would just be a delay, and whether it would be long enough to endure, pieces of it. I think our intent is that a demolition delay would be one of our tools that we could possibly avert demolition of historic assets to the community. It is, as it's the makeup of the ordinance, it is just a delay. So an owner, group of condo people or whatever, and maybe using the Johnsonia as an example, is that it just might delay it, and when the delay period is over, being at 12 months or whatever, then the owner still kind of knock it down, and it could, it's possible in a situation like that that it's kind of a no-win thing for a demo delay. But in other buildings, in other particular sites, it certainly is a tool that the community could support to find alternatives and being able to bring those forward to the current building owners as viable alternatives, and perhaps even getting backing of majority of the community behind it, and it's a possibility of being able to get things to consider the alternatives, and that's what the delay period is about. Would we win all of them, or would every building be saved? Absolutely not. It is a period for kind of rethinking, if you will, and when that period is finished, the owner has their absolute right to go ahead and do the demolition. Secondly, your comment about historic districts. Historic districts are enabled by a vote of the community. We have one historic district, what is the Monument Park Local Historic District, that our commission does have demolition and almost any changes, including roof and fencing and things like that. It includes a small group of buildings, about 11 buildings in the Monument Park area. And it is a much stronger tool. And as maybe you're suggesting, also besides demolition delay, that our commission should maybe think about creating additional local historic districts with the approval of the city. And it's an ordinance that would have to go before city council for their ultimate approval, and the approval of generally the citizens represented by their councilors. And as our commission, maybe this is something we should start putting on a front burner of our thoughts also, because it is another tool, and perhaps a stronger tool, and particularly if backed by the community, to create additional historic district or districts focused on larger sections of Main Street, if you will, other areas of the city that have significant heritage and structural and physical properties to them that would be evident to the community as something that the city has a kind of a stronger view of. As Don had mentioned, Ellen's experience with the city of Salem. I believe Salem has maybe, 5 or 6 local historic districts. And I suspect some of them are in downtown, and some of them are in their some of the rich residential communities, which Fitchburg has also. And these could be things that we could help the city of Fitchburg develop and help to be mechanisms to, besides a demolition delay, to help preserve, the important heritage of the city. I think in most local historic districts throughout the Commonwealth, people find these as beneficial to the real estate value of their particular properties, and it certainly adds to the heritage and recognition of and pride, if you will, of individual communities. And as Mark kind of pointed out, coming from other communities and seeing what Fitchburg has, sometimes we kind of, being here a long time, we might kind of forget the value that this architecture and our heritage has to our community at large. And as you say, we are going in a building boom at the moment. Certainly, the economy of Fitchburg has switched gears into, I believe, a positive fashion. And part of our charter as a commission is to kind of be aware of these things and help to preserve the heritage of our community as part of our role in the city government. Mark, thank you for your comments. I think speaking with like your department and others involved with city government and kind of how these things would actually work as we try to put them together, certainly valuable for us to understand. And we appreciate your knowledge and support of kind of what we're doing, and we'll try to make it so it becomes an agile, positive thing that the city can work with and support in a lot of ways. So we're looking forward as we're meeting with various parts of the community as we're proposing this. We're hoping to get our draft in a more refined and doable fashion, and hopefully getting support of the various departments and people in the city to, as we hope to bring a final draft before the city for consideration, that we would have many of our T's crossed and I's dotted as we're going forward. So thanks much. Any other questions for Mark while he's still here?
I'd also like to thank Mark for the answering questions and for providing your perspective is extremely valuable for us, and I look forward to working further with you.
Great. If I may say one more thing about the historic buildings and their preservation, a lot of people don't realize historic buildings can also revitalize properties that are in a flood zone. Because if your building is in a flood zone and your building is designated a historic building, then you can do a lot of work to that building and not have to make it meet flood zone standards. And that can allow a very inexpensive total renovation of the interior of a building, as long as the historical commission still designates that building historic when it's all done, if it's on the local register or on a state or federal register. So and even a local register is enough. So, but if you guys create a register, or if you already have one, someone was in a commercial building by the river, then they could revitalize that building as long as they take steps to keep the building historically accurate.
Good point. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, we've seen some of that, and some of the we have to be, certainly owners need to be aware of floods and so forth as we're experiencing one more hurricane down in the southern part of the country. But flood zone maps are being updated, if you will, with more current data that might be changing the flood zone areas, and certainly the probability of flooding can change. It's not something we as a commission can guarantee or not, but it certainly takes off a lot of restrictions from, and has enabled at least a few in our understanding here in Fitchburg to kind of move forward. Probably a lot of the edges of downtown are in flood zone areas, and this could be an important tool for owners, if you will, to develop alternatives.
Speaking historically, some cities and towns are looking at bringing back beavers as mitigating flooding on the rivers and streams. Just so I plop that into the mix. Go ahead, Keith. Sorry to interrupt.
That's great. I think kind of another thing that certainly the commission kind of watches, but we don't have control over, is a lot of the downtown buildings that were originally zoned commercial, and they were commercial for long periods of time. And most or a lot of that commercial has gone, particularly from the upper floors of the buildings. And the city has rightfully rezoned, I believe, most of the downtown area as overlay districts where there can be multiple use or mixed use in a lot of these buildings. And being able to let current building owners or future building owners understand the potential of these changes in zoning, of having mixed use, particularly the use of maybe residential on upper floors, or that had been kind of outlawed before, and particularly parking requirements in the downtown business district might be a lot lower than they might be in an outlying district, particularly because of the kind of the smart growth plan that Fitchburg is dealing with, and our proximity to commuter rail, the downtown's proximity to commuter rail. Living downtown is you're close to post office, you're close to commuter rail, you're close to libraries, you're close to businesses, you're close to a lot of other people, and a lot of functions, and grocery shopping, kind of all of our kind of daily needs, making it a more walkable city. Still having, I think we probably have an abundance of parking places scattered out, particularly around the city, more than we particularly need, and we can maybe walk a block or two to get to our cars for those who would like to live in a thriving downtown area. And it is, while we were kind of on a public broadcast here, are there ways that the people can develop mixed use types of structures in older buildings, or mixed uses, and kind of the things that the building requirement or current building codes and things require for certain things? Is your department and the city in general kind of open to people discussing and having open, how can I do this type of thing? What would need to be done to my building to get a proper fire exit, or do I need an elevator in this building or not? Is the building, your department, kind of open to talking with people about alternatives to?
Absolutely, but the volume that we are moving right now, it makes it difficult to do that. But fortunately, most of the downtown buildings are fairly large, and they usually bring a more refined applicant to the table, and they usually are more. They really only need a high level discussion in order to get going. I think the smaller investors in the smaller buildings are the ones who need the most help, because it could be the first time investor investing all of his life savings on one building, and it's a small, might be a 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 square foot building, and those folks really need the guidance. So, but we certainly would talk to anybody about what they need to do.
Yeah, that's terrific, and I think that's I think our downtown kind of runs the gamut of small footprints and small upper stories, perhaps, to some very large buildings that could have some alternative build outs in them, and for the way the city is going. So thanks again for joining us today. And hopefully we'll have some updates and maybe some refined drafts of the ordinance that we'll send your way. And, for comment from you and your department to kind of help us create something that's doable and certainly advantageous for the city as far as retaining our historic heritage. So.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. Thank you much. All right. Shall we move on to our other parts of our agenda? Ellen, I think you're unmuted here. You have to hit the mic button to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. Thank you very much. I wasn't sure that I was connected to be able to speak to you when Mark was there, but just to. Pardon?
He's still here.
Oh, he is. Oh, Mark, in the late 70s. I can't get rid of my phone. I'm sorry. In the late 70s, the city hired a really outstanding company to come in and assess the whole downtown, Main Street specifically. And there were 3 recommendations. The first one was that if we wanted others to invest in downtown, we needed to address the streets, the sidewalks, and the lighting. The second was that we had a great opportunity to build a parking garage that would be very visible to anybody, working on Main Street or driving on it. So the parking lot that faces Pritchard Street was an empty lot because a major grocery store burned. And so that was an easy location. And we were very fortunate both in improving the infrastructure for Main Street and having the funds to build a parking garage. We were very fortunate to be able to get state and federal support. And as a matter of fact, I don't want to forget to tell you that as part of their recommendation, they recommended that when the parking garage was ready to really discuss and move forward on, that we advised the engineers, the architect rather, to frame the riverside of Mill Street. That was just a little walkway, and there was a small a very small diner that it almost looked like it was on stilts, but that was the only building at that particular location. So when the parking garage was designed for that area facing Pritchard Street, it included the design included a portion of the parking garage to define Mill Street. And I always thought that that was one of the greatest things that happened because it's cobblestones and it is in itself is an historic reminder of what all of Main Street was paved with. Anyway, but the third recommendation was the one that I thought was wonderful. The die was cast. Downtowns were losing doctors' offices and insurance companies and businesses that would occupy the second, third, fourth, fifth stories of these buildings. So they recommended that we rezone all of the upper stories of buildings on Main Street to provide the opportunity for residential use. And the only real example of how that has played out was Newview Community Development Corporation purchased the Safety Fund National Bank, and they exercised their opportunity to create apartments in that building. And it's I think it's a great way of showing what we all hope will happen. It was repurposed beautifully, and the view from the back, if you have windows facing the river, the views are just spectacular. Anyway, the point I want to make is we rezoned, the council and the mayor rezoned all of that area at the closing of the 1970s. And as I was listening to all of you and Mark, I was really pleased at many of the things you shared that I certainly hadn't thought of, that we would I lost my train. I now have Zoom. I'm looking at Zoom, so it distracted me a little bit. But I think it's a great opportunity to refine the demolition delay and also to help people appreciate the architecture in downtown Fitchburg, because it is unique and there are specific features. And I draw your attention to the building that was called the Syndicate Building, and it's part of the wonderful redevelopment on Main Street in Morin Square. But the building on the right, if you're facing it from the diner, has some beautiful medallions, and it also has a vertical design between some of the areas that have lovely windows. So I guess, no, I don't guess. I'm delighted that you're participating with the commission, and we're all having an opportunity to consider things from different perspectives. But the goal is to help everybody recognize the architecture that is just there for us to enjoy. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Ellen, I have a question. Was that when the overhead wiring on Main Street was suppressed, was put underground?
I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty sure it coincided with that, Dawn.
Because that it's amazing. Main Street has no overhead wires.
No,
and going down the side streets either.
No, I'm almost sure that's that coincided with following through on the infrastructure portion of Main Street. That was the very first recommendation from this consulting firm. And I'm pretty sure, I'm sorry that I can't say that I'm absolutely sure, but looking back, I remember the wires and the wooden poles. And we did have a discussion about well, I don't think I can remember enough of it to have it be helpful. But I thank you for asking, Dawn, and I will make it my one of my projects to ascertain if that is exactly what happened.
That's one of the very positive features of Main Street.
Yes, it is. It is.
No overhead wires.
Just if you're driving up towards Main Street, heading towards Crocker Field, check and see if there are still wires there. I can't visualize.
Okay, I'll do that.
A lot of people don't think of that as an extension of Main Street, and Crocker Field almost abuts Main Street, and that in itself is a historic district. And as you all know, it was designed by the sons of Frederick Law Olmsted.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ellen.
You're welcome.
Okay. Should we move on to our agenda items? Other agenda items? Okay, why don't we do that? And again, thank you, Mark. If you're welcome to stay, but feel free to step out if you would like.
I appreciate that, and thanks for the opportunity to talk with you guys. And good luck with your project.
Okay.
Final recommendation is start small and grow into it. See how it works, and expand as needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Okay. We were on item number 4 of our agenda. What I'd like to do is maybe go back to number 2 and review and approve minutes to our last month's meeting, July 27th. I think I'd made a recommendation on a minor correction. Are there any other recommendations or recommendations for approval as amended?
I recommend that we approve the minutes with Keith's correction and
Okay, second.
Ellen, second.
Can you second?
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. That's unanimous from members present. Thank you very much. And let's see here. We are at 4:35. If we don't mind, we'll try to go on to at least 5 o'clock if that's okay with everybody. Update on Monument Park repairs. Maybe kind of one piece of it is on the benches, where we've gotten a quote from Boston Bench for cast iron type of benches similar to the ones in the Upper Common. I've gotten a quote from the Boston Bench Company for individual and a total of 8 benches that would have a kind of divider armrest in the middle. And we've gotten that quote. I've sent that on to the mayor's office. Mayor DiNatale has recommended that, we're proposing that the Historical Commission help to raise maybe some funds for this by having maybe benches or opportunities for the community to sponsor a bench or part of a bench for the Monument Park, and perhaps create a kind of an application form, perhaps on our letterhead, for individuals to sign up for sponsorship of purchasing a bench. And this could be sponsored by individuals or individual families or local organizations within our community. Right now, I believe a single bench is probably with a inscribed plaque on it somewhere for I think it's about a 5-foot long bench with the center armrest in it. Would cost in the range of about $2,500, I'm estimating. And being able to create this application that the mayor could use to solicit donations or sponsorships for individual benches or multiple benches, and that the funds perhaps go into a city account that's specifically meant for the purchase of said benches, and the benches would then be installed by our DPW or Parks Department. Any discussion or questions on something that we might want to do that? You're muted, Ellen. Ellen, I think you're muted. If you would, there you go.
What I have to do, that line at the bottom of the window, the screen rather, keep that line with the little icons keeps disappearing.
I think you have to bring your cursor down there to make it highlight sometimes. You just have to bring the arrow down to the bottom of the screen and it might pop up then.
Well, it just did. So I will keep an eye on it. No, I think that it's a wonderful opportunity for people to invest in the benches. It's all part of restoring and beautifying our downtown. And Monument Park is really a dear, it's just a dear place. I wish I still had that video of the history.
No. Yeah, I guess the alternative would be that, the city finds budget to just purchase them all and put them in as an alternative, but knowing that funding might be sparse in the city, and there's a way of returning benches back to Monument Park. I think looking at early pictures of Monument Park, I don't think there were benches in kind of the original rendition of it. The benches were added at some time, probably during the 20th century, and were recently removed, I think maybe 5-10 years ago, and getting them back in would certainly, I think from our commissions and as part of our local historic district, I think our opinion is that we would like to have them back there also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Please, I have a question. Were there gates at the front entrance to Monument Park on Main Street? Because in the steps, there seem to be indentations.
Did you say a gate?
Yeah, was there a gate there at all, ever?
Not that I remember.
If I think I have a picture of what was there. Do you want to take a look at it? I can find it on my computer.
Yeah, I just wondered what the indentations in the.
I think there were a row of bollards on the top step or the top granite piece that kind of align with how the iron fence kind of goes up to the top of the stairs there.
Yes.
Comes in from Main Street, and there was a series of cast iron bollards similar to the actual fence main fence posts that were there, perhaps to keep people from driving their horse and wagons up onto the common or grazing up there, maybe. And you can see the little holes drilled into the granite there, indentations, like you noted, that were probably the anchors for those posts. And I have an old photograph somewhere that shows those. I don't know. I could search and find it, or I'll make a note of finding it and sending it to everybody.
Good. Thanks, Keith.
All right.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. In the historic photos, you'll see extra posts on those entry steps.
Okay.
Kind of, minimizing the entry or something.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if people could tie up their horses. Who knows?
I've also noticed in some of the old photographs that's been posted on Facebook, the Historical Society's Facebook then and now account, that the major posts actually between the corners all had a little finial on top of them originally also. And our current version only has the round ball finials on the four corners. So the fencing appears to have taken some changes along.
It did, Keith. We had a lot. I mentioned the funding that we were able to get for the to build the parking garage and new lighting and so forth. I think that's at about the same time that a complete revitalization, a restoration or revitalization, I don't know which word is correct, of Monument Park took place. And I'm just wondering if somewhere in city, in City Hall, if there's a plan that was used to do that work, an engineering plan. Would they be able to keep something like that?
Quite possible, or they might have digitized it by now. I'm not sure.
Well, I'll make a note of that.
Yeah.
I'll make a note of that to see if I can find out. I know someone I can call.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be just some interesting historical information on the park there too. So getting back to the benches, is there? I have after I received the response from the mayor about how to might fund these, I made an inquiry to the bench company to get a price for adding plaques to the back, probably the back panel or one of the back slats of the park bench, to have it engraved with this particular individual or organizational name for the sponsorship. And I have yet to hear back from him, but hopefully in the near future, I will get a quote and kind of where these can be located. Right now, we had recommended benches that have the center armrest in them, kind of like I believe the Upper Common has like that also. And the center armrest goes up as noted with a piece of cast iron that goes all the way up the back and kind of supports the slats going from the center to the ends. So it's hard to put a plaque right in the middle. You can't put a plaque right in the middle because there's a piece of cast iron there. There's no wood slat exactly in the middle. So trying to figure out where, a commemorative brass, bronze, whatever it is, plaque could have engraved in it the sponsor's name. So we could divide it up into having half a bench sponsored, so we could have two plaques per, would be the center of each seating area with this divided bench arrangement. Or I'll see what the manufacturers kind of recommending on that, and they'll show everybody too. So that could be an issue of how we and we do it as half a bench or one seat, and so we could have 16 sponsors, and it would be a lower price, more like $1,200 or something like that. That might be more acceptable price range for more people. So we could have 2 plaques on each bench. So there could be each seat would be dedicated. So that would be 16 separate donors, and unless somebody wanted to buy both of them, that would be good too. So some details need to be kind of worked out on this. Why don't I, as soon as I hear back the details on what these cost and kind of the parameters of what the plaques are like, I'll send that out to everybody, and we can kind of figure out a plan. And the mayor is recommending there would be some sort of application form that we could sponsor as the local historic district commission. And might be some good publicity for Monument Park and some public backing of that. Maybe we could even get a news story or something like that with the Sentinel or whatever to get some public information out on it. I don't know if there are such things happening like that anymore with the paper, but perhaps could turn on into the actual printed and the digital form of the paper as a possibility. With a someone how to contact us or contact City Hall, and the mayor's office could have these application forms, and people could write out their check to a specific fund and to the city government, kind of going toward the bench purchases.
If when I don't know when you talked to someone directly, but were the benches that were removed, were they destroyed, or were they put someplace?
Good question.
I think I don't know. I think there was an issue with them being a little bit too long for easy to lie down on.
Well, I know that was the issue, but
yeah,
it would be terrible if they'd been destroyed.
Yeah, I think they were very kind of contemporary looking also. And if we, my personal thought is having a more traditional, kind of cast iron bench that kind of dates way back in history might be fits in a lot better with their proximity to the cast iron stuff nearby. So that's a good question. Don't know where they went. Maybe they got installed in some other parks also.
Possibly.
That's possible. Good question, though. So why don't we leave it? I'll share the information on the plaques when I get it. And at that point, if we can talk about how to create application form and the exactly how many plaques per bench there might be, and who might want to volunteer to help create this application form. So,
I'd love to help.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Other things in Monument Park. I haven't talked with the Parks Department on other budgeting as far as the fencing is concerned and the repair. And also the last meeting, Charles had brought up the kind of a maintenance issue with the brick on ground level bricks that were inlaid with donors' names for the Clara Barton plaque relocation regarding the Civil War nurses. That's
right.
on Wallace Avenue, kind of in the center of the Wallace Avenue side inside the park. So I don't have updates on that. I hope to make some contact with the Parks Department, hopefully within the next few days to, and I'm wondering if it's something we could actually maybe send a representative from our commission to the Parks Commission to just kind of make our point to the Parks Commissioners of about this project and getting it budgeted and funded through the city funds, and obviously coordinated with the Park Department as it's their maintenance responsibility.
Hey, Keith,
Yeah.
I was kind of wondering, would that bench company be able to make cast iron moldings of the railings? Or
When
would they have some
when I first talked to them and the sales representative, I mentioned that to them, and they said, "Sure, we'd be happy to take a look at it." And they obviously have a casting company that makes their brackets and the main portions of their benches that they create. So I did ask them about it, and they could be added to the list of. We did get a list of potential contractors that do this type of work. This was a couple of years ago, but I still have the list located somewhere of other companies, and we could add the Boston Bench Company to the solicitation for pricing or bids, if you will, on a future project once it gets defined. Yeah, I think trying to make our point of, we have no budget and we have no actual control on what's done in the park except for our oversight as a local historic district commission, and maybe a personal appearance before the Parks Commission members to kind of get a little bit stronger on their agenda and and with the DPW, and getting some funds allocated ultimately for finishing the bidding documents and the actual cost of the work, and actually seeing it through to its completion. So there's kind of a multiple piece thing that needs to be funded, and we've been kind of walking around this for many years and just trying to get attention. One thought is maybe we actually asked to be on the agenda for maybe a Parks Commission meeting.
Yeah, one thing I would like to see is they're emptying the trash more frequently, because when you go into these parks, the trash bins are overflowing and there's trash all around, the trash container. And I'm wondering, well, how often do they empty the trash once a month or what?
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see that people are putting the trash in the containers. We're trying to. Hopefully, it's just not
always.
Yeah.
Often I'm the one who drinks it over.
Good question. Yes, we could bring that up too.
They did it. New barrels on the park, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Last year, something.
Yeah.
I think you sent us a picture.
Well, that was the recycle.
Oh,
yeah, that's something different.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of the other piece besides the railings, the Clara Barton brickwork, and the benches, and I think the last item is the actual evaluation or
Of
condition
the monument.
of the monument itself,
Mm.
and getting an expert to take a look at that and make any recommendations of what maybe should be done. I talked to the mayor about that a couple months ago as they were dealing with a similar issue with the fountain in the upper common.
Mhm.
And I was asking them to perhaps use the same consultant they were using for that, historic sculpture consultant. And I haven't heard a piece on that. So let me make a note to speak with the mayor on that. On the monument. Again, to kind of move these things forward, it's since we don't have the purchase authority, looking for recommendations or volunteers to chase these down. I think that covers the issues at Monument Park. Moving on to item number 5, update on appreciation and preservation of historic stone walls and structures. I think we made Mark understand these are two separate ordinances and or proposals, and whether this is an ordinance or an education program, or how we form this. Any thoughts or discussion?
I was somewhat surprised that he thought that they were part of the same when and when they are clearly two distinct ordinance proposals.
Yep.
And I don't know how to make it any clearer. There seems in so far, even going back when we talked to the city council 10, 12 years ago, there seemed to be a lot of preconceptions about the demolition delay and now the proposed stone wall ordinance. And okay. Mark did make a suggestion, I think it was before the meeting began, create a PowerPoint. And I think that's my action item for next time. Okay. You can write that down. We create a PowerPoint and create 2 PowerPoints so that they don't conflate them. I think that will help resolve some issues. Rather than asking people to actually read something, it may be easier for them just to view a PowerPoint.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be great, and it's something that we could. I think we could easily post it to our commission's website, along with historic marker applications and some other things. And I think farther down on our number 10 on our website editions. And it's certainly for people, interested in preservation and what our commission is kind of standing for, maybe posting a PowerPoint on perhaps a brief narrated PowerPoint, or even just with captions to it. That could be basically an animated one that kind of goes forward and does a quick presentation. I think that having that link to our website and other ways of trying to put it out to the public again, a brochure or something like that could happen if we wanted to put it in paper format also, kind of explaining the unique, focusing at least on stone walls and perhaps on demolition delay. The stone walls, the unique quality of what we property owners have and what we see as we go through the city, both in rural and downtown areas. The kind of role of stone walls and structures has in our city in particular. So it'd be great. Any thoughts on how to create, maybe starting with the stone wall? And we're really talking about it as kind of more and more, we're kind of talking about it as a public education piece. Is that something, Don, or any others like to start creating a PowerPoint?
I would like to start creating that PowerPoint, yes, or those PowerPoints.
And I keep thinking about the the gorgeous stone wall behind B.F. Brown and the stables. That stone wall is just magnificent. And there's also, that's a grand example, but just to get people to start thinking about what we have, I thought of a game that the city could play, or say, if the newspaper were working with us on this, and we could, prepare some kind of suggestion of where they are, and have people, seek and find them, and maybe take pictures on their phones or something. I need to think this through carefully, and I need help to make it a really productive idea, if it's possible.
Yeah, this could even be something we could ask FATV if we could, maybe Don or somebody or a group of us could go on to FATV with one of their community programs, just to make where it's recorded and becomes a permanent record and searchable on their website with the PowerPoint and kind of discussion of the important heritage of our stone walls, along with the PowerPoint or other slides. And visual aids like you're recommending, Don, is, I think, really a great thing, and really starts moving people and understanding what we're talking about.
Park's idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I think let's all give this some kind of more thought. Don, if you want to, Don and others want to start a PowerPoint with some images. If any of the rest of us have some photos and maybe of specific walls, we can send them on to Don to help in him sort through the kind of collection. Things like the High Street wall that Ellen just mentioned is certainly probably one of the tallest retaining walls. That's probably all from the quarry up on the hill.
My understanding is that it was. That's where they came from. Yeah. You could. This is just a thought. The cover of our booklet, or whatever, could be the boulder. That would be on the front page, and then, I don't know if it has something to do with my own personal age, but I just have this feeling of, or wish, I think it's more than a feeling, that there was some way of providing visuals to people to get them to think about it, to think about how we look at things, so that they would have the joy of seeing them maybe sometimes for the first time. I don't know.
No, I think those are all excellent ideas and something we could really find be able to exploit it. I think having something in visual format, besides just a written document, means so much more sometimes, and particularly in an educational type of format. Sounds great. Why don't we all kind of be thinking about it? Yep. And if we have some images or suggestions, funnel them. Don, if you're up for it, we'll funnel them through you to kind of curate this.
Funnel away.
All right. Sounds good. Any other thoughts on this? I think there's a lot of ways that we can distribute this, and be thinking about ways we can publicize this type of documentation too. So, all right, moving on to number 6, update historic districts information brochure, information guide, signage, web posting. Thanks to everybody for your editorial comments on the brochure. We found lots of things in there that need some tweaking. I have that list. I'm trying to finish up some QR code links to various parts of the write-ups at the end. So somebody that wants to kind of dig deeper in this, I've been dragging my feet on it, and I'll try to finish up those links this next couple of days and see if we can get our final edits into the graphics people at Fitchburg State. So I will keep you updated on that.
Keith, if I know I remember asking something at our last meeting, but I don't know specifically what it was. But is the brochure in a form that it could be sent to us, as the draft, so we could all look it over again and help you?
Yes, I think I'd sent it out kind of the beginning of this month. I'll send you another. So.
No, I'll look. If I missed it, I apologize. But I will look. If it's the beginning of the month, as long as my...
Yeah, I'll make a note here. It's easy to forward it again to you also. So.
Well, wait. I'll call you tomorrow and let you know if I found it, okay?
Okay, sounds good. It might have been the end of July. Depends when our meeting was. I think there were a few days left. I think I did it a couple of days right after our last meeting. So It might be very end of July or early August.
Okay.
Probably historic brochure.
Yep.
Titled. But we'll try to get that into a printed format. We'll kind of go for the brochure finishing. Kind of the next task is to get the graphics for the signage finished. So let's try to do one at a time. At least get some of it done, and we might be able to see if we can get some printing done on this. At least some final draft copies for some review in actual full-size 11 by 17 format. So hopefully within the next, certainly this next month, we can get that in good shape. Okay, historic marker update. We have a new sign painter. And we have 2, I believe, signs that are in process, or markers that are in process. The sign painter is having some problems with the dark colored paint actually, the formula that they're using for their paint, of it actually drying and adhering properly to the plaque substrate. So these two plaques that have been on order haven't been completed yet, and the sign maker is having some technical difficulties with the paint adhesion. So we'll see if that gets resolved. So that's basically the update on it. We're having a little problem in the production on this, and we hope this gets resolved shortly. So I'm actively following that up and hopefully give you some progress on that soon. Project to document and share Main Street building histories.
Yep, that's moving along.
Okay, great. Vacancies on the commission, number 9. Any thoughts or headway of knowledge of members, potential members that we could put forward? We were hoping that we'd get somebody from the legal profession to join, and also perhaps somebody from the real estate, representing real estate properties in Fitchburg. We're having some difficulty getting those finished. So I think getting recommendations of any interested people that would be valuable.
I'm waiting for, I'm trying to pursue a lawyer, but I'm waiting for an opportunity to talk to someone in the real estate industry here. And I just haven't gotten the name of, I've asked for a name of someone who I can speak to, in person.
Great.
And explain. So.
Okay, let us know if you can get some success on that.
Thank you.
Okay, and other commissioners, if you can keep your thoughts open and see if you have any recommendations to help bolster our membership. Number 10, something I had a thought on for our website, adding links for things that are relative to the people's understanding of our heritage. Some of the things could be links to identifying architectural styles of buildings in our community. There are some published handbooks and things like that that we could add perhaps to our website. And again, kind of following Don's thought of having some PowerPoint or something like that. Or maybe it could even be, a program on TV or something, kind of talking about and with visual examples of, things of how to kind of understand and interpret some of our building heritage or built environment heritage, like stone walls. It could be things like building details and names and, what is that particular kind of bay window called, or that bracket on that building? What is that? What is the style of something that's Greek Revival or Victorian or bungalow style? Various things like that. That once you can have a name for something, you can kind of identify it. You start being able to read kind of history into what you're seeing by understanding what period they might have been built or what was happening during that. Was this built during the Civil War or after the Civil War or colonial times? Also linked to preservation briefs for people that are looking to renovate their properties or how to restore a particular part of your building. Next, new business. Things we would like to add to our agenda or topics. Okay, hearing none. Next meeting is December 28th, 3 p.m.
Mhm.
And motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second,
I second.
all in favor? Aye. Thank you all joining us and being with us. And we have some good work to do in the meantime. And take care.